Well, welcome to Driving Change. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to introduce my next three guests. We had Mayye Zayed joining us with Craggs-Milne and Hilary Caldwell to talk about a new film called Lift Like a Girl. These are important women who are doing meaningful, substantive work in their own rights and in various ways. We talked about gender and about bias in language. We talked about weightlifting and Olympic sports and about pursuing the gold and what that actually means, and about what kind of commitment, what kind of passion, and what kind of intentionality you need to do that. We talked about opportunity and about access, and we had a great time doing it. So please step into our next interview. It's called Lifting Expectations. You're going to love this episode, but I think you're going to really love the film as well. So check that out, impactseries.net. You can find out more information about that. Subscribe to the podcast Driving Change where you listen to podcasts, and please leave us a review and sign up for the newsletter when you get a chance. We would so appreciate that. But coming right up, we're going to show you the trailer for the film. It's all of about 60 seconds, and then we're going to step right into the conversation about this beautiful, compassionate, and moving new film, Lift Like a Girl. Welcome to Driving Change.
شايفها حتى في حاجه ناعمه في الاثنين. وعند الناس اللي قابلت عقبات ياما ده مشوار. حتى كيلو كنت تبقى نجم راح منك كوانت. هو من كلب.
Well, welcome to Driving Change. We are so glad you made it. This is episode 2. We have 3 very special guests here with us today to talk about a whole lot of issues, but also about a film called Lift Like a Girl that's going to be opening, I think, in Cairo in the very near future. We have the director here with us, Mayye Zayed, to talk about a whole lot of things. We have Craggs-Milne here to talk about her work. And of course, we have Hilary Caldwell. You've already heard my intro, I would imagine. Hilary Caldwell, Olympic medalist, somebody who likes to spend a great deal of time in the water. And we're going to hear a whole lot more about that. Thanks to you all for joining us today on Driving Change. Really appreciate it. Can you tell us a little bit about how you found out about this story, provide a little bit of context for our listeners, and maybe tell us when you first met the captain? Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, the story started back in 2003. Back then, I was a teenager. I was 18 years old. And I remember one day I was watching the news, and I found out that there is this Egyptian girl called Nahla Ramadan who has just won the gold medal in the World Championships in weightlifting. I was so surprised, to know that there are female weightlifters in Egypt, first of all. And second, I started reading more about her and how she is training in the streets with her father, who is also her coach, and that she has very little resources, yet she could make it to the World Championships. And Nahla stayed with me for so many years, and throughout the years, she became a sports icon, not only to me, but to all Egyptians. And I remember very well when she was competing at the Olympics in Athens or in London, like all Egyptians, I was so, I was really cheering for her, praying for her. And yeah, so in a way, I became so attached to this idea, of pursuing your dream no matter what. And then in 2014, I had the chance to meet Captain Ramadan in the training site. And I found out that he has been coaching so many women, not just Nahla, to be professional weightlifters. And I felt that, wow, okay, I really want to spend more time in this place, and I want to film the captain, and I want to film the girls. And then after some time, I realized that it would be great to just follow one girl in her journey to pursue her dream. And so that I can, in a way, I can make a film that can inspire, other young girls the way that I was inspired by Nahla's story.
Yeah, no, that's so great, Maya. There's so many questions I have for you, and we'll get back to them, I'm sure. But I do want to talk to you about, did you ever imagine that you would be, in Cairo, presenting the film at a theater, doing a Q&A in the next 24 hours? I mean, it's wonderful. Congratulations too, by the way, on the film. It's beautiful. It's moving. It's everything I think it needs to be to challenge us all, right? To have. To step into these conversations, but also to act, and I think that's a marvelous thing. So thanks for making the time. 4 years in the making, yes.
6 years actually. 4 years filming, 6 years in total. Yeah.
Wow, 6 years in total. Wow.
And this year, 2021, is the 7th year. So.
Yes, yeah, you're keeping track. I don't blame you at all. Karen, question for you. After 20 years of working in so many sectors and working and I think you would probably italicize this, but as a gender equality expert, are you surprised that there are women who are actually weightlifting in a country like Egypt? Is that a surprise to you still in the 21st century now?
Well, I would say that I was less surprised and more inspired by the evidence of change and progress that this story tells. And, there's so many things I love about the movie and the story. One of them is showing changing times and showing that happening in a broader social context that has been very male dominated, and within a sport that has been male dominated. But showing that, it doesn't have to stay that way, and it isn't staying that way. It's evolving. And another piece that's so beautiful, and I think that applies to many people in Egypt and beyond, is the role of male champions and role models and partners for women and gender equality. So I just think it's inspiring more than surprising. And I think ultimately it challenges our ideas of the MENA region and, the perception that women are oppressed in that part of the world, because that's also a stereotype that we need to unpack, which this movie does. Please.
So yeah, challenging stereotypes and kind of smashing those idols almost, in a sense. Hilary, you've spent a lot of time in the sports world, medalist, clearly a deep love and passion for competing and swimming and so on. Can you talk a little bit about your experience, as a woman stepping into that? Did you find that you were up against barriers that perhaps a male swimmer wouldn't have been up against? Is that something fairly common, would you say, or not so much in your experience?
I think it's interesting that I think in some sports, for sure, I think swimming is probably one of the sports that there's a little bit more equality in, that it's not like one of the sort of marquee sports, a soccer or where a tennis, or where you're really seeing like men be the real stars and the women really have to push themselves into that conversation. And definitely for pro sports in North America, we see that as being a very male-dominated thing, and hockey and football and baseball and basketball. And the women's aspect of that is very much a second tier, never really on TV. You don't hear about these female sports heroes the same way. And swimming is less like that, in that the main time people watch swimming is at the Olympics, and the focus is kind of equally on both. And when there's a good race, there's a good race. So I didn't necessarily experience much in the way of like, well, my earning potential or my ability to gain recognition or fame or success was impeded by my being female. And there's also a lot of different aspects, I think, when you're an athlete in general, that through kind of high school and growing up, and you're sort of battling between being fit and strong and muscular and successful in sport, which is historically a male dominated thing to be. And there is a huge attrition rate for young women in sport all through, especially through those teenage years, as they sort of reconcile what matters to them and what they should be versus what they want to be. And I think in weightlifting, I'm sure that's a huge thing, in that you really are going to be big and muscular and stronger than the boys. And I think historically we don't expect that of women and girls. So there is this inequality in who decides to push through in sport and who has heroes in sport to look up to. And so many more boys have that. And I will say swimming is a rare one in that men and women train and compete kind of together. So maybe,
I mean, Karen is the academic, is the teacher, instructor, professor, and you saying, hey, maybe there's some lessons here to be learned. Is that possible? That maybe it's time to do an audit of this part of, you know what I mean? Like, is that a possibility?
Well, I think whether it's in the field of science and technology, or whether it's in sport, or whether it's in car racing, whatever it is, even nursing, like, let's look at the other side of it. There are gendered occupations, gendered sports, gendered, organization of life in general, in different ways. And so for me, the opportunity is, why do we automatically assume that a girl doesn't belong in this sport, or a boy doesn't belong in this sport, or in this profession, or cooking or cleaning? And so it's even broader than just teaching. I think it's about deconstructing those social norms and expectations that hold us back from trying things that could be amazing, or supporting people that we love who want to do things that are non-traditional.
Yeah. I'd love to come back to that sort of that systemic edge to that, because it comes out in so many ways. You think that you're, I don't know, enlightened, woke. I mean, use whatever sort of language you want, and then you can be sitting around and a cliche rolls off your tongue. Whoa, where did that come from, right? And I think there's this sense of we just, I don't know. I just wish we could all listen to one another a little bit more, and I think that's something I've, as I think driving change. I think that's kind of what we're hoping this is going to be about, the Impact series. And by the way, folks, a little shout out. Don't forget to sign up for the podcast and where you listen to podcasts, and please leave us a little review and sign up for our newsletter as well on the impactseries.net. But yeah, the where it makes its way in, right? Those systemic barriers, I continue to be astounded by that, and I have a great deal of hope. And I think what's so beautiful about Lift Like a Girl is it's such a hopeful story. I'm not gonna tip the ending sequence, but the last 90 seconds of the film are just beautiful and subtle and just so meaningful. So again, well done on that. Did you ever think you might call it Lift Like a Woman, the film? Did that ever cross your mind?
No, not really. I remember choosing this title very early on, and it was always Lift Like a Girl because we start with Zebiba, and she's a 14-year-old girl, and I really wanted to capture this journey. And I think Like a Girl as an expression itself is very insulting in a way or used in a way that it is insulting to women. And I kind of wanted to use it for the title, because that was my take on it, that I will use it, and I want more people to use it in a positive way, that girls can do anything. So that was initially my idea, and it never really crossed my mind that I would name it Lift Like a Woman.
One of the things that comes out in the film, and I hope I'm not tipping too much here, but the phrases, and I'm sure as on an editorial level, you left them in for good reasons, but those phrases of "come on," sort of be a man, lift like a man, right?
Yeah,
I'm not quite sure what that exactly means. I think I do. But can you talk about that? Because I think it's connected to the captain as well, and how he coaches and how he trains. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I'd love to hear what Karen and Hilary have to say as well on this.
Yeah, I noticed, which is something that I've always noticed, that there is a big gender bias in language, and that's not only in Arabic, that's in all languages, you know. And
Absolutely, yeah.
and I found it strongly, you know, among the girls themselves, and I was so surprised by how they use some terms that are so sexist, but they use them in a way that, you know, they, I don't know, like for them, the only way to be strong, or, you know, or to be equal to men is to be called as men. And I felt, you know, that my role as a filmmaker is not to judge them in any way, or not to try to change anything, but more to capture the reality as much as I can, and then hopefully have the film open this discussion, you know, because then when you put things in front of the audience, like, okay, these are the terms that we use every day. Like, for example, we don't have terms to cheer women in sports. Like the most common phrase to be used is like, be a man. And sometimes people say it unconsciously, even, like, you can be a very feminist person, and yet you use a term like this because it's strongly embedded in the culture. And I really wanted to frame these phrases throughout the film, and just have them so that when the audience watch the film, they realize, oh, but she's a girl. Like, why? And just ask this question: why? Why do we say that? Why is it so embedded in us that we use these terms? And then I felt that, you know, the best I can do to Zebiba, you know, after all these people telling her to live like a man, is to name the film "Live Like a Girl," you know, so that she always remembers what she has to do, you know.
That's great. Love it. Karen, I'd love to hear what you have to say about gender bias in language. Is there a day coming when "live like a girl" actually will not mean what it used to mean? I know that's a pretty big question, but I'd love to hear a couple thoughts.
Hey, I think it's already come. Look at the title of this film. Look at the story. Look at the message.
Great.
Like,
Love
we're
it.
here, right? And I think so. When we look at socialization as a process, it's a reality. Bias is built into language. It's built into how we navigate the world. It is the way human beings and our brains function. So stereotyping and bias. And I think the most important thing is, number one, recognizing it, and number two, reclaiming language and being intentional. And I love that this film and the story and the intentional use of that title are all about, you know, reclaiming and empowering and bringing back and reinterpreting. And that's, you know, to me, that's what it means to be an agent of change. I was going to say feminist, but beyond feminist, to be an agent of change is somebody who looks where the opportunities for power and empowerment, and where do we find our own power and agency in that. And this film is just such a beautiful example of the complexity of the project of female empowerment, right? Because here is a man who's making space for a woman and a girl, and changing roles and calling people out and championing and also reproducing the same patriarchy and language and behavior that holds people back. And so it's complex, and it evolves with time, and it requires us to be conscious and intentional, which I love about the title of this movie.
Yeah, there is a great question for, it seems to me, an academic program. You know, how can we be conscious and intentional? You know, I mean, my background academically is philosophy, as you know, Karen, and but that's something that I think is an everyday concern. You know, as you get into the car, as you interact with other people, as you get onto a Zoom call, how can you be conscious and intentional to not use, you know, biased language and so on? I think it's, I love that you think, though, we're already there, and that, you know, it's beautiful. I think it really is beautiful. I love that positivity, and yet we've still got to reclaim. We still have to reinterpret, you know, which I think is beautiful. Hilary, in the film, the captain, I love how the captain, for all his idiosyncrasies, I love that he keeps saying, "I'm training champions." And I mean, it just speaks to the desire and to the intent and the passion and the commitment. And I watched Zebiba, by the way, Mayye, and I just can't believe the amount of effort that's involved in the passion and the commitment to it, and worrying about food all the time. And that is not a sport I want to do. That is for sure. Yeah. What were the lines, Hilary, that you used? Fit fit, strong, and muscular. I mean, I'm the personification of that, really, aren't I? There we go. I got some laughter.
For
That's
sure.
yeah. Thanks, Hilary. Yeah. Thank you. Dripping with insincerity. I love it. So, Hilary, talk to me about your desire. I mean, did you know from a very young age that this was something you were going to do, that you were going to kind of, I don't know, change the narrative in your family, in your life, turn the world upside down in a particular way? I'd love to hear about some of that focus and compassion and also, I guess your desires and your dreams.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of always speak to my Olympic dream, at least kind of coming out of, I was 9 years old and I was watching the Sydney Olympics in 2000. And that's the first Olympics I remember watching. And I remember watching the swimming. I was already swimming, a couple times a week. I was 9, so I wasn't in any way serious at that age. But I remember watching it and wanting to be there and saying, well, I'm swimming and I want to do that. And at 9, I had absolutely no idea what that would entail and what training you need to go into that. You just have this naive dream that looks fun. Let's go do that.
Not just a bathing suit. You mean you don't need just a bathing suit? Not
just a bathing suit and a week or two of training. That's not
right.
how it works. But yeah, and then from there, I was okay when I was a teenager. I was not the sort of upstart superstar, and in swimming specifically, we sort of tend to have the odd, very young female sort of superstar who comes out of nowhere and they're 15 or 16 years old. And that was not me, as much as I wish it was. And I was sort of a long slug through those teenage years, pushing and really wanting it and not necessarily seeing the results that I felt like I was training for. And I think I can credit a million things for where that pivot happened, and being surrounded by incredible training partners, I think, was a major thing where you start to learn what it takes to be world class. And I think if this is a culture that is happening in Egypt where the expectation is world class because that's who you're surrounded by, and it really does drive change, for lack of a better phrase there.
Sure.
But
nice.
But really to push the needle, you need not just one person, but a culture of it. And we saw it for our team in Rio. I was going to say 4 years ago, 5 years ago now. It was our female swim team was incredible, and we won 6 medals in Rio, all won by women, and a couple female relays, and then a couple individual female medalists. But it became the norm to expect a podium finish, and so that sort of culture and that sort of expectation really does create momentum. And I think momentum's everything for success. And so I got to be a part of a really incredible team of women. And we were the story in Rio. It was not just in swimming, kind of in general. The Canadian women were the ones winning all the medals, and definitely in the pool, it was the story. And it was pretty cool to be a part of something like that. And so really, to see that kind of being replicated in another capacity with the weightlifting is so cool, because I know how powerful that can be. And it starts with 1 or 2, and then it becomes
good.
Yeah, it becomes what's happening.
Hilary, I love your phrase, a podium finish. I don't know that I don't watch a lot of Olympic sports, so I've never really heard that before, but it's really, really marvelous for a lot of reasons. I have a question for you about that as well, the captain and this desire to push champions. He seems to be really, there's a moment in the film where he is so focused on the fact he's talking to, I believe, a community leader, and he says something about essentially, no, we really need to focus on these young women. Forget about the boys, I just thought that was really interesting. Can you tell me a little bit about the captain's sort of, I don't know, shift at some point? Like how did he grow up that way? A man at his age, a part of the system, et cetera. And I'm fascinated by that. And I'd love to hear more.
Well, I remember asking him the same question one day. And he had a very simple yet strong answer, which is, like he learned by example. Like, he had 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls, and he trained all of them to be weightlifters. And back then, women in Egypt were not playing this sport. So actually, his 2 daughters, Nahla and Nagam Ramadan, were the first 2 Egyptian women to play this sport. So they basically introduced the sport to the rest of Egypt, for other women to compete in it. And then after training his kids, he realized that his 2 daughters, one of them is a bronze medalist, junior world champion, and the other one is a gold medalist, world champion. So for him, it all started there, and from that point, he became an advocate to women's rights in sport, and he was like, whenever he was meeting any parent, any person passing by the training site, he would actually just talk to them in their own language and in their own culture, in a way, just to convince them, to bring their to come to the training site. Because Egypt is a very big country. It has big cities like Cairo and Alexandria, but there are some communities, even in these big cities, where some parents don't even allow their daughters to play sports. So he was really he was trying to reach out to these parents and convince them to bring their kids. And I witnessed a couple of times that some of these parents ended up bringing their kids or their daughters to train in the training site. So he was very successful in convincing others of what he believes in, and I really respect him for that.
Yeah, no, that's great. You were saying he talks to people as they walk along, or he throws rocks at them, which
yeah. I mean, he sometimes, when some people harasses the girls, and that happened a couple of times. I mean, in the film we see that once or twice maybe, but in reality, it was happening more often.
Well, I just so love that his method of training seems so, I don't know, punitive and angry, and yet underneath, I wonder if there's this, this comedic guy who doesn't actually take himself all that seriously. That's sort of the sense. And I wondered about that. Karen, there's this beautiful metaphor that Mayye lays out for us in this story of the training site. That's just kind of, there are no resources, it seems, right? They've got a few weights, they've got barbells, they've got no plants. There's a gorgeous, wonderful sequence where the captain is even bricklaying to slowly build this wall to try to, protect these young women. And it's just really interesting to see the training space grow throughout the film. And it just made me reflect on, what you can do with very little, the kind of change that you can push back on. Is it possible when we're trying to move mountains? I mean, of course, the gender mountain, the race mountain, the sexism mountain, etc. Can you talk a little bit about that, from sort of starting from the ground up? Where do I even begin?
That is such a profound question, and you begin with yourself, and you begin now, and you begin with the people around you. And that's how we change the world, and that's how we move mountains. It literally is that profound. And I love hearing the story that it started with his own daughters. It often does. It often starts with your own children, or your own parents, or your own spouse, or your own mother-in-law. That's right, where it starts. Right? Yeah.
I'd love to hear from any of you on this idea, and I think Hilary touched on it really nicely. I can't remember, Hilary, if you used the word community, but you talked about that team effort, the folks, the people, the coaches, the judges, your family, the fans, I would imagine. Where does community fit into this? Do you need to go out and find them, or do they kind of find you? Is it a bit of both? Mayye, do you want to start? I'd love to hear from all three of you, your own specialties, your experts, all in your own fields, and I'd love to hear some thoughts on that.
Well, for me, what I really noticed is that all the parents of the girls training in this training site are very supportive to their kids.
Sure seemed that way.
And throughout the years we spent there, some girls ended up not not like leaving or like not continuing to play weightlifting or to compete for weightlifting. And I was always very interested in the girls who stayed and in the families that supported them. And I wanted, because again, without having all the support, you will feel alone in a way. But with having the community of the parents, of the teammates, and that can really push you through many things. And I try to capture some of that in the film. Even the close relationship that Zebiba and all the girls have with each other, like they are family. And after spending, some years with them, I started to feel that they are my family too. So
Right.
in a way, they like just being there, like, makes you feel empowered in a way.
Yeah, it seemed to me that there was a sense of authenticity or vulnerability there. And I wonder to what degree just spending so much time together sort of breaks down those barriers. It doesn't always happen, really, does it? But in the communities we live in, but it is fascinating. Karen, do you think it's about, is it about being real? Is it about being authentic? I mean, that kind of presupposes that you can see those things to begin with, but you said it starts with the individual. Do we surround ourselves with people like Hilary and Mayye and Zebiba and yourself? Is that kind of how we do this?
Well, what is so powerful for me about the video is that rather than picketing outside saying women have rights, he simply did what he's really good at. He taught people how to be weightlifters. And it wasn't about, are you a woman or a man? It was about, do you care about the sport? Do you have potential? And inviting people into that, and then creating change through action, and then inspiring others who saw something in there for themselves that then drew them into the conversation. So you'd have, I remember a scene where a mother is asking about the son. Can my son join? And the girl says, what about me? And he says, sure, come on in if you want, right? And it's just, it's about action. Sometimes I feel like we spend too much time, with those signs, instead of just showing up and being and doing. And those who see themselves in what you be and do will find their way to you, and I just love that about the way this all unfolded. It was just really powerful.
I'll just step in and say what you were saying. Does it take time and time spent together? And in my experience, it's not even about time. It's that even if it's a short amount of time, when you're going through the insane roller coaster of ups and downs, emotionally, mentally, physically, that sport represents, it actually takes very, very little time to create a bond as deep as family, just because you see each other through these crazy, crazy highs and devastating lows when you don't make a team or you suffer an injury or whatever it might be. But sport kind of exists in the extremes so much more than real life, as I call it, now that I'm a retired athlete. But it's those extremes that forge, I think, the strongest bonds and create the community that really does go to bat for you and fight for you and believes in you when you don't believe in yourself, and gets you through the challenging moments, of which there are always a ton of in sport. It is not an easy thing to do, and that's why there aren't unlimited Olympians and unlimited world champions. But it definitely does take a community, and any athlete would tell you that they did not get to a podium alone. They did not get to a championship alone. And it's coaches and it's teammates and it's parents and it's siblings and it's a whole roster of support team, therapists and all sorts of things. But those bonds really forge quick in my experience, and you really get to know the best and the worst of people quickly. And I think that's what creates that feeling of family, that you are able to be vulnerable because you're not going to disguise who you are in those moments of elation or defeat. Right.
Yeah, that's excellent. Where did Zebiba go? Did she, at one point in the film, I think the captain calls her a piece of crap, I believe. He's quite upset with her. And she says, I know. And she walks away. And yet she came back. Can you talk a bit about the support around her? I mean, I know you've mentioned it a little bit, but did she have some close friends that she leaned on I don't think I saw her on her phone once in this story, which I thought was really interesting as well. Yeah, Mai, what was her? Who were her support team? Really, was it the captain?
Well, I made a decision in a very early stage that I really want the training site to be a main character in the film, and that that see it growing, the way I want to see Zebiba. And I remember, back then, I had or some people had doubts about, even the DP, do we need to film the Zebiba in her house or the girls in their school, stuff like that. And I felt that I really want to stay in this training site, and because I could see what Captain Ramadan has been doing in it, and after spending some time, I could see that every day he would add something to it. Whether he would plan something, he would paint another thing. And and then we had that all filmed, and then in the editing process, I talked to the editor, and we decided that we to have the training site as a character, and try to find an arc to it, a dramatic arc
sure.
to it. And in earlier cuts, sometimes the training site had much more time on screen, or the developments in it, because we were really following everything that was going on there. And then, in other cuts, we would take out, some scenes, and we kept on doing that till we found this balance, that we have the training side, but we have Zebiba and we have Captain Ramadan, and the relationship between all three, and the other girls, of course.
Well, I think it's a brilliant metaphor. I really do. It's the kind of thing a film student would write an essay about, it seems to me, taking a piece of the film and really, kind of exploring it and teasing it out. Karen, sadly, we're going to have to wrap up in a couple of minutes, and I can't believe how quickly the conversation has gone, and loving every minute of it. And I'm sure our guests are too. Karen, you've done a lot of work, gender equality expert all over the world. Why are you still hopeful? It's a pretty big question.
I'm still hopeful. I mean, let me give you a very personal answer. The world that my grandmother lived in was one where she had very little rights, very little mobility, very little freedom. My mother had more of that, and look at where I am, right? So I've seen real change happen in a matter of a lifetime, and then multiple lifetimes and generations in our own family. And I see the way I'm raising my children, my son and my two daughters, and I know what's possible. And I know that all it takes is for people to be committed to enabling people to have opportunity and to have choice about their lives and their futures. And I continue to believe in that. And I love all the change I see. The small ones, the big ones, they all matter.
Yeah, that's great. Love it. Hilary, I'd love to ask you a question. There's a great moment in the film where Zebiba, I think, is wearing a whole lot of medals. It's really wonderful. It's almost like, oh, wow, they're weighing her down, right? I mean, there's a whole other question and metaphor we could explore. But was it ever about the medals only for you? Because I'm interested. Was that the driving force? I got to win? Or was it way more layered and nuanced than that?
Definitely more layered and nuanced. I think if you're in sport and you've made it as far as an elite athlete does, you are in it to win. And I can speak to, I was a bronze medalist at the Olympics, and I remember I have flashbulb moments of that time, and I remember touching the wall, and I remember sort of relief that I was on the podium, and disappointment that it wasn't a gold medal, and I was in it for a gold medal. And I don't think there's anything that compares to standing on the top of the Olympic podium and hearing your anthem and knowing that you are the champion, and the medal is great. But I think it's about a whole moment, sort of a culmination of a lifetime of work. It's about representing where you come from and all those people in the communities that we talked about, and that victory can look like a million things. And you see certain people where just getting to a final or just getting to a podium is the celebration that a gold medal would be. And for some, one gold medal is never enough. And and athletes talk a lot about the depression that goes along with being so successful, because with the mentality of always better, always better, always better, comes the, well, what's enough? What's worth celebrating? Right. So there's so many different layers to it. And I think, yes, it was for me always about results, but you can't be about results without thinking about that process and that journey. Because if you're only ever thinking about the moment, in my case, that your hand touches the wall, or in Zebiba's case, the moment, I guess, that the weight successfully goes above your head, you lift that weight, whatever your moment of success is in sport, if it's only about that, you're never going to see the results that you want, and those will never be enough unless you actually enjoy the whole process of it, and the day in, day out, the all days at the training site. For me, 2 times a day in the pool, hours and hours and hours swimming up and down, and it does need to be about that too. And you do need to love what you do, not every day, because you won't love it every day, but as much as you can, and you have to find why you're doing it, and the why cannot only be a gold medal or a world record or a new best. It can't be, because you're never ever going to find happiness, I think, in that. It does have to be about a whole lot more than that. And the result is just the sort of icing on the cake at the end of it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the phrase that came to my mind is there's just a whole lot more going on than meets the eye.
Yeah.
There's layers, there's community, and again, I think it comes out so beautifully in the film. It's the film is Lift Like a Girl, and the layers are extraordinary. You must feel a little like you've won a medal. You've got the film premiering in Cairo, Toronto International Film Festival, I think Doc NYC, the Leipzig Film Festival. Can you tell us a little bit as we wrap up our conversation? And I'm really sorry we got to go, but can you tell us a little bit about what's next for Lift Like a Girl, and maybe for you?
Well, for me, I'm very excited to have the film released theatrically, in Egypt and in the US and Canada, because then, more audience will have a chance to watch it. But I also want to reach out to the kind of audience that won't be able to watch the film or can't afford to get a movie ticket. And that's why I'm working on an impact campaign to really, and working on a shorter version of the film that's child appropriate, 45-minute, that can be used in classrooms, so that we can do school screenings in Egypt and everywhere. So that then when we screen the film, we can open a discussion about gender, about weightlifting, about sports, about all these things, and especially with the young Egyptian audience, I hope that when they watch a girl like them, or coming from the same background, or like she can be their sister, she can be their neighbor, and then they can see that, oh, she can do it, and then I hope that the film can inspire them to pursue their dreams, even if they don't have to do, if they don't really relate to sports, they can think in anything they want to do, and then just do it. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. The film is now being screened in Zawiya, the movie theater in Cairo, and starting from tomorrow, we're having a series of panels, to talk about. Tomorrow, we're inviting a selection of female Olympic athletes in Egypt, who will talk about their journeys. Just like, it's really it's a long journey, and I want the people, or the audience, when they watch the film, that they know that there are a lot of people just like Zebiba, and then we're also organizing another panel to talk about the psychological challenges facing female athletes, and another one about nutrition, because I think there are a lot of things to tackle, and I really hope, with the film, that I can just have all these discussions, and hopefully the film can create some impact.
Yeah, what I love about the film is it's narrative. It's obviously cinema verite, I guess you would call it, but it's this we get to look into these lives of people in another part of the world, and we get to be inspired, and we get to be challenged, and we're affirmed and encouraged, and all of those things. So thank you so much for the film, and congratulations again. Karen, where can we find out more about you and the work that you're doing around the world?
Well, thank you for that. And before I talk about me, I just want to, acknowledge all the incredible work that you're doing as a filmmaker, Mayye. It's incredible. I mean, the fact that you told a story that a man would have told from a different perspective, that it was the perspective that a woman takes, which is very, incredibly different and important. You're breaking your own barriers. And so thank you for that. And to find me, just Google my name on Google and you'll find me. I'm pretty much everywhere on social media,
Nice.
LinkedIn, Instagram, and everywhere else.
Well, thanks for joining us today. Hilary, on another interview, perhaps we can talk about your fingernails. I hear there's like I've heard that you would paint your fingernails before you would go into a race. Is that actually true? Is that the real work on you?
Yeah, I mean, I think every athlete has their own little rituals.
Of course.
To make you feel game ready, and good nails were always something. I've got some bright ones going on now as well.
Nice, that's cool.
But that was something. Yeah, definitely had to race with some good nails.
Well, what a great time I've had today on Driving Change and with you all. And I mean, talk about barely scratching the surface. It's always something. And I think this is my sort of frustration with a great conversation. We're just starting. We're just getting out of the gate, and that's an amazing thing. We've been talking with Mayye Zayed, Hilary Caldwell, and Karen Craggs-Milne here today about a whole lot of things, but also more importantly about the film Lift Like a Girl. Check out the impactseries.net for more information about that. Sign up for Driving Change wherever you listen to podcasts, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much for joining me today. What a pleasure, and really an honor to have you all on the show. Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Karen Craggs-Milne, Mayye Zayed, and Hilary Caldwell, talking about community and building bonds and relationship and about pushing back against the status quo. Don't forget to subscribe to Driving Change wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Acast, Google, wherever that might be. Please do subscribe. Share this with your family and friends. Don't forget to learn more about the Impact Series at theimpactseries.net. And if you want to help, if you want to step into this, you can look into the impact campaign around Lift Like a Girl at liftlikeagirl.com. And then don't forget that Lift Like a Girl is going to be in cinemas on July 9th. Thanks for joining us, and welcome to Driving Change.